Started working with Bruce Lee 1967. He was a kung fu martial artist. I, being an American fighter, we didn't think much of kung fu fighters because most of them didn't fight. They did a lot of that, what we call finger painting type movies.
With millions of fighters across the globe, only a handful face a legend like Bruce Lee in a raw, no-holds-barred clash. For karate icon Joe Louis, that moment came in the 1960s, a brutal sparring match that became a martial arts myth. At 81, Louis broke decades of silence, revealing the truth behind their fight, a story of rivalry, respect, and relentless spirit.
He was talking about instead of throwing a horizontal punch like this, you throw a vertical punch instead of putting your power side back like a boxer would stand.
Fans are stunned, wondering how this showdown shaped two titans. If it happened in that gym, why speak now? Keep reading to uncover a tale that's left the world speechless. The clash revealed. Joe Louis, a towering figure in karate, stunned the martial arts world again on the screen, this time not to fight, but with an interview at 81, finally addressing his long-rumored sparring match with Bruce Lee. Known for his full-contact kickboxing victories, Louis had stayed tight-lipped about the 1960s clash until now. Speaking to a fight magazine, he described a fierce session in a Los Angeles gym, driven by their bold personalities. Both men, in their prime, tested each other's limits, blending karate's precision with raw power. Louis shared how their differences in his heavyweight strength versus Lee's lightning speed ignited a heated exchange.
Guy who only weighed 138 pounds, and he weighed less than that when he passed away. He hit extremely hard. He could hit as hard as a heavyweight.
Fans on social media erupted, sharing clips and debating who had the edge. Louis's decision to speak after decades of silence felt like a gift to those craving insight into two legends. He suggested time had softened his guard, wanting to honor their shared past. Could this story reshape how we see Lee's legacy? Watch on to find out. The interview unfolded in Louis's modest North Carolina home, where old trophies lined the walls. He spoke with a calm intensity, recalling how he met Lee in 1967 at a tournament. Louis, a U.S. Marine and champion, wasn't impressed by the slim actor at first, skeptical of his untested style. But Lee's confidence drew him in, leading to private training sessions.
His advice, and Bruce Lee and I got in contact with each other, and once a week I would go there and take a private with Bruce and spend the whole rest of the week working on what he would show me.
Their sparring match, Louis revealed, wasn't planned. It sparked during a drill when egos flared. Lee's speed overwhelmed at first, his kicks landing before Louis could react. Yet Louis's power shifted the tide, his punches forcing Lee to rethink. Neither admitted defeat, but the session left them bruised and wiser. Fans online buzzed. Some shocked Louis held his own, arguing Lee's agility won out. Louis's candor showed no bitterness, just respect for a rival who pushed him. Louis didn't dodge the tension between them. He admitted their styles clashed in Shorin-ryu karate and boxing, Lee's in his evolving Jeet Kune Do. During their spar, Lee darted in and out, frustrating Louis's heavier strikes. Louis countered with grappling moves, learned from wrestling, catching Lee off guard. The gym echoed with their grunts, a crowd of students watching in awe. Louis said it wasn't about winning, but proving their worth. Lee's footwork dazzled, but his lighter frame struggled against Louis's force. They stopped short of a knockout, agreeing to cool off. Social media lit up with fan posts, some calling it a draw, others digging into Lee's speed versus Louis's strength. Louis's account showed Lee as a fierce innovator, not just a star. His openness at this stage felt like a nod to truth, a way to clear the haze of decades-old gossip. The story gripped everyone. The sparring match wasn't just a fight, it was a turning point. Louis explained how Lee's approach, blending fluidity with power, made him rethink karate's limits. After their clash, they trained together for months, watching boxing films and drilling tactics. Lewis credited Lee with inspiring his shift to full-contact fighting, a style he pioneered in 1970. Their session showed what worked in AR, real brawl. Speed alone couldn't win, nor could brute force. Fans shared old photos online, marveling at their bond despite the bruises. Lewis's words painted Lee as relentless, a guy who'd train until he dropped. But he also noted Lee's weaknesses, like overextending kicks, which Lewis exploited. The interview didn't crown a victor, it celebrated their drive to grow. Lewis felt compelled to share now, perhaps sensing his time to tell it was short. Their relationship wasn't all harmony. Lewis recalled moments when Lee's showmanship grated on him, like when he'd boast about untouchable speed. In their sparring, Lewis aimed to humble him, landing shots to test Lee's chin. Lee fought back with sharper focus, his punches snapping like whips. They pushed each other to exhaustion, neither backing down. Lewis said it built respect. Lee later called him a top fighter, a rare nod. Fans on social media debated fiercely, some siding with Lewis's power, others with Lee's finesse. Lewis didn't shy from Lee's flaws like his lighter build, but praised his heart. The interview's timing, with Lewis aging, felt deliberate. He wanted to honor their rivalry without old grudges. His voice carried no malice, only admiration for a peer who changed him.
To me, Bruce Lee studied a lot of J. Krishnamurti's philosophy. He used Wing Chun punching techniques. So Bruce Lee, in my personal opinion, Jeet Kune Do was a combination of all the best aspects from a philosophical point of view to an athletic point of view.
This wasn't about settling scores. It was about truth. Lewis's reflections went deeper than punches. He described Lee as a thinker, always analyzing, even mid-fight. During their spar, Lee adjusted on the fly, dodging Lewis's hooks with uncanny instinct. Lewis learned to move smarter, not just harder, from watching him. Off the mat, they'd talk strategy, Lee sketching moves on napkins. Lewis saw a guy driven by obsession, not fame. Fans shared clips of Lee's films, tying them to Lewis's tales of his real skill. Lewis admitted Lee's charisma could overshadow his grit, but their fight showed the man behind the myth. At 81, Lewis spoke to preserve their story, not to boast. His health, he hinted, wasn't what it was, pushing him to open up. But this was not the only fight Bruce Lee was involved in outside the screen. Want to know about other fights with colleagues and rivals? Watch on to find out. Bruce Lee's famous fights outside the screen. Bruce Lee's life once blazed with the raw intensity of a martial arts pioneer, a dream for fighters worldwide. His real-life battles, like the 1964 sparring match with Wong Jack Man and the 1967 training clashes with Joe Louis, showcased his skill and cemented his myth. These moments, glowing with the thrill of combat, marked his peak as a fighter beyond the screen. Yet, as time unfolded, these triumphs led to unforeseen struggles. The glory of proving his skill brought pressures that tested his spirit. Rivalries, myths about his victories, and the weight of his growing fame created a storm he hadn't anticipated. The fights, meant to define his strength, became a battleground of scrutiny and expectation. Clashes with traditionalists, personal doubts, and the relentless drive to innovate strained his resolve. What began as a showcase of prowess turned into a fight to preserve his identity, with fame's fleeting nature threatening to overshadow the warrior who once stood unchallenged. The first signs of trouble emerged after the Wong Jack Man fight in 1964. Lee, then 24, faced Wong in Oakland after criticizing traditional kung fu as outdated. The sparring, held in Lee's school, pitted his Wing Chun against Wong's Shaolin style. Lee's speed won out, chasing Wong down with punches in minutes, but the effort left him winded. This victory, a career-defining moment, sparked backlash. Chinatown's martial arts elders saw Lee's win as disrespectful, labeling him an upstart. In his interview, Joe Louis recalled how Lee's boldness stirred similar tensions during their own 1967 sparring. Fans on social media shared old stories debating Lee's dominance. The fight's fallout wasn't just professional. Lee felt the sting of being an outsider, his Chinese-American identity scrutinized. The triumph that elevated him also isolated him with rivals, challenging his methods. The warrior who'd dazzled onlookers now faced a harder fight, proving his worth in a community that resisted his vision, leaving his confidence shaken. By the late 1960s, Lee's sparring with Joe Louis added new layers of challenge. Their 1967 sessions in Los Angeles, intense and private, tested Lee's evolving style against Louis's heavyweight power. Lee's quick kicks landed, but Louis's punches pushed him to adapt. These clashes, meant to sharpen his skills, brought unexpected scrutiny. Martial arts circles buzzed with rumors. Some said Lee outclassed Louis, and others claimed Louis's strength prevailed. Yui said these tales grew out of control, much like the Wong fight myths. Fans online posted clips of Lee's training, hungry for truth. The pressure to live up to his reputation as unbeatable weighed heavily. Lee's drive to perfect Jeet Kune Do, born from these fights, consumed him, straining his health with relentless training. The leap from celebrated fighter to myth was jarring, impacting his sense of self. The fights that showcased his genius now demanded he prove it endlessly, a burden that left him restless and exposed. The emotional toll of these fights deepened over time. Lee's victories, meant to cement his legacy, became chains tying him to an impossible image. The Wong fight's myths, claims of a 20-minute brawl or Wong's defeat, dogged him, forcing constant defense of his skill. His sessions with Louis faced similar hype, with fans still arguing over who won. Lee felt the pressure to embody perfection, a martial artist without flaws. Any hint of struggle, like his stamina issues against Wong, drew whispers of weakness. The martial arts world expected him to be a god, not a man, and the strain of this facade wore him down. Personal doubts crept in. Could he keep evolving, or had he peaked? Louis's reflections noted Lee's intensity hid this vulnerability. The vibrant fighter who'd captivated gyms now questioned his path, a stark contrast to his fearless youth. Maintaining his legend, especially amid growing fame, became a battle fought alone. Society's demands amplified Lee's struggles. As a Chinese-American breaking the barrier, he faced bias in a sport dominated by others. His real fights, unlike his later films, drew skepticism. Some dismissed him as a showman, not a warrior. After the Wong and Louis clashes, traditionalists criticized his hybrid style, calling it disrespectful. Fans on social media debated his authenticity, some echoing old doubts. The media, eager for drama, spun his fights into larger-than-life tales, ignoring the grit behind them. This scrutiny hurt, making Lee feel like an outsider despite his triumphs. The absence of a steady support network worsened things. While students like James Yim Lee stood by him, many peers distanced themselves, wary of his fame. The betrayal of those who'd once trained with him cut deep, leaving him to face challenges in solitude. The fights that had built his name now fueled a narrative he couldn't control, testing his mental and emotional strength. The weight of these battles left lasting scars. Lee's relentless push to refine his skills after the Wong and Louis fights took a physical toll of exhaustion, and minor injuries piled up. Emotionally, he grappled with isolation, the cost of his outsider status. The public, who'd cheered his early demos, now seemed to relish the myths over the man, with social media posts amplifying old rumors. The media's harsh lens, framing his every move as proof of invincibility or failure, deepened his sense of loss. Louis spoke of Lee's hidden struggles, a fighter battling more than opponents. The confident innovator who'd faced Wong and Louis now faced self-doubt. His past glories a reminder of what he risked losing. The lack of empathy from peers and fans, who saw only the legend, left him drained. His fights, once a source of pride, became a chain, tying him to a pedestal he couldn't escape, fought in the quiet of his mind. Confronted by these trials, Lee felt a profound shift. The life he'd known, filled with the rush of combat and admiration, was now a memory. The future, once blazing with promise, seemed uncertain, shadowed by expectation and exhaustion. Lewis's interview revealed a man who saw Lee's fights as both triumph and burden, a story of resilience amid adversity. Lee's journey, often painted as one of victory, was equally one of struggle, a reminder that even icons face storms.